Thank you very much. And just to reiterate, my name is Kay Watson. I am the digital curator at the Serpentine Galleries in London. What that means is I work on the development on the artistic program in relation to digital platforms and emerging technologies through artist commissions and research. So I'm very, very grateful to Anne and Mathilde for having me here today. Thank you so much to all the other speakers and also for this wonderful translation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an overview of the Serpentine in general, explain a little bit more about why I've been invited here today. I know you've just heard some of that, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. And then I'm going to introduce the digital curatorial program at the Serpentine Galleries, and a little bit about what we're thinking about in terms of this programming in relation to preservation and conservation, very broadly speaking at the moment. And I should highlight that I'm coming at this not from the perspective of heritage, but what we are trying to do is think about our program and the work that we're doing in relation to one part of our future heritage, if you like. So for any of you that don't know the Serpentine Galleries, we were founded in 1970 in a tea room in the middle of Hyde Park in London. We now have 2 galleries in 2 sites, each over the bridge from each other, as you can see on this lovely photograph here. Just to go through some of the numbers, we are a public gallery. We are funded by the Arts Council England. We also do a huge amount of other fundraising from corporate, individuals, trusts and foundations, that kind of thing, as many institutions do these days. We have 2 directors, Jana Peel, who is CEO, and Hans-Ulrich Obrist, who some of you may know, who is our artistic director. We have 2 sites. We have 1.2 million plus visitors a year. We have worked with 2,026 artists in our 48-year history. 2020 is our 50-year anniversary. We're working towards that at the moment. We worked with 65 artists, 260 artists in 2017. We have 65 staff members in total across the 2 sites. We are often in the top 50 of art newspapers' most visited galleries in the world, and we have 7 annual exhibitions and many other events. So we are perhaps best known internationally for our Serpentine Pavilion Commission. This is where an architect who has yet to build a structure in the UK designs and builds a pavilion in a very short period of time on site at the Serpentine. This year is the 18th year of the commission. It has just closed, but the architect this year was the Mexican architect Frida Escobedo. Aside from this, we have a program of exhibitions. I've included this image from one of our current exhibitions by Pierre Huyghe. This is an image, part of an ecosystem artwork that he's created using image data from MRI scans and neural networks to generate new photographs. I won't go into any more detail about that. We also have an extensive program of education, live, community projects, and digital projects. I must highlight that we have no collection. And whilst we have an archive, we do not have a well-established program of access for that archive, nor is that archive digitized and available online yet. So why am I here? And in particular, why am I speaking at a photography concerned with conservation and preservation of collections? So as you've heard, I'm also, in addition to my work at the Serpentine, I'm a photography curator, I'm a PhD researcher, and I'm a former photographs archivist. Over the last 10 years, I have worked on the establishment of photographic archives for numerous high-profile British fashion photographers. I've worked on the establishment of collections databases and archives for institutions such as the Photographers Gallery in London, which is, also does not have a collection, but an exhibitions archive. And the Contemporary Art Society, which is an organisation that works across the UK to gift works of contemporary art to regional museum collections. So it's a distributed collection of artworks. I'm also part of a photography curating collective called Hemera Collective. I have organised numerous photography exhibitions at the Finnish Museum of Photography in Helsinki. I also curated Photo 50 this year at London Art Fair. My PhD research is concerned with the history of small photography organisations in the UK in the 1980s and 1990s. I'm concerned with community photography organisations, artist-led spaces, and other cooperative spaces. Generally, these are feminist spaces for photography. So I'm particularly interested in the shifting meaning and value of photographic images in relation to time, institutions, and the market. I'm also interested in the impact of technological change on the history of image making and the way that images have been distributed and interpreted. I'm also increasingly interested in, you will see why shortly, in how we talk about image making with current image processing technologies such as CGI, game engines, immersive technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. Especially in this context, as a recent dramatic increase in computational power has meant that we are increasingly able to access the tools of virtual image making and real-time rendering. This is the major reason why the program I'm about to explain to you exists at the Serpentine Galleries. And in my opinion, the histories of photography are a vital part of how we talk about and how we engage with digital. So I'm going to use some of this background to talk about the Serpentine digital program and what we do in terms of commissioning born digital works. So, the digital program at the Serpentine Galleries was established only in 2013. It's a very new program with the appointment of a digital curator. This was initially Ben Vickers. He is now Chief Technology Officer at the Serpentine. That is a first for a UK institution. And I arrived 2 years ago. At the beginning of the program, it was a very simple idea to lead on the development of a series of digital commissions, that is, born digital works. So the way that these are defined are where artists are using new or emerging technologies as a medium, tool, or a topic. Frequently, these have taken the form of a piece of software. This has enabled artists to tackle technology from its operational interfaces and has allowed artists to use the social and physical reality to influence technology and vice versa. The works that we have created depend on interaction, live data, or collated research. And this way of working has meant that we have worked on 4 commissions so far. It is sometimes a slow process. The first one here is Cloud Index. This was a weather prediction model that consumes vast amounts of historic weather data from satellites and correlates it with polling data on major political events. I should add that this was around the time of the EU referendum. And this is by British artist and writer James Bridle. And this creates a form of political weather forecast. And this resulted in a website which is constantly evolving. And James Bridle is also, a well-accomplished writer and a series of essays. Second, and this is yet to launch, is Actual Reality OS. This is an augmented reality tool with which to view inequality data collected from local activist organisations mapped onto the architecture of the Serpentine Galleries. So this is by the German artist and theorist and filmmaker Hito Steyerl, and is a precursor to a major exhibition of new work by her next year. This is just a visualization because it's augmented reality. You'll be able to see through the camera of your mobile device the reality of the Serpentine Galleries overlaid by the building that has been sculpted by data. This was another one of our commissions, Bad Corgi, which is a mindfulness app by the American artist Ian Cheng. This was basically a game that you could never win. And this is the first ever digital commission that we did, which was an AI bot within the Serpentine website called Agnus by Cecile B. Evans. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more shortly. So I just want to explain a little bit more about the digital program, which in the last few months, in the last year, has expanded and shifted significantly. This is because we have now taken on a nationwide role to sector convene in art and technology. What this means is we are trying or prototyping the development of mechanisms to share and develop the knowledge that we are acquiring with other institutions in the sector, whilst also building bridges between art, science, technology, and policy. An important part of this work is that we're not just seeing this as a shift in our artistic program, but it's an operational shift internally at the Serpentine. We're overhauling the Serpentine Gallery systems, platforms, databases, CRM, as the way that we think is that the platform informs the work and vice versa. We also now curate one exhibition a year in the gallery spaces. This is the first. This year, in spring this year, a double exhibition by the American artist Ian Cheng in two halves. The first was Bob, which stands for Bag of Beliefs, which was an evolving AI creature that was born in the Serpentine, who evolved and learnt and remembered through interactions that took place in the gallery space. The device you can see on the left is that device. And the second was a series of 3 simulations called Emissaries. These are what Ian calls video games that play themselves. And what these 3 works did was to chart a history and potential future of consciousness. Just to say that with regard this, we do not see our engagement with digital and physical as being mutually exclusive. In addition, we've also developed a Serpentine radio audio archive and platform where we develop and distribute an ongoing podcast series. And we're also undertaking research and R&D. We now have a PhD program. Our first PhD researcher began working with us in the last few months, and a research program, research network across institutions. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview of how we see digital at the Serpentine. So, Agnus. I thought this would be an interesting project to share in this context because it's actually 2 projects in one, functioning on an operational and a curatorial level. It was also the first ever born digital work the Serpentine had commissioned. In a sense, it was the very beginning of all of this. It was also a bit of an experiment, and maybe there are certain things that we didn't know to think about or do. So the first part of the project was actually the development of an institutional bit of software, which was a platform built into the Serpentine website. It was called the Artist Platform, and it was designed to give the website its own context, to become its own exhibition platform. So this would provide you with content based on you, so the time of day, what browser you're using, your location, all of this kind of material. And so we're designed to be reactive to the audience. And then there was the artist commission side of this first work, Agnus by Cecile B. Evans. Cecile is an American-Belgian artist based in London. Her work is concerned with the impact of technologies on our emotions and our actions. So she used this artist platform as the basis for a non-human entity, or a bot, who would inhabit and still inhabits the pages of the Serpentine Galleries website. Through a series of interactions based on Agnus asking you questions, she is an artificial intelligence, your interaction with her would never be the same and would shift and change depending on the time of day, etc., etc. She would show you Serpentine-related content, images from the web, images she'd created, and videos from the internet, all the while gauging your reactions. So here are some images of certain interactions that had happened through the website. Obviously, this is a very image-led project. So these are just some of the, including the very old Serpentine website that she brought back from the dead. So when this project went live, it went live with the relaunch of our website, which is always a terrifying time in any institution. And when we began, we had no concern for any form of preservation. All we were concerned about is how we were going to commission artists to use new technologies and to make use of digital platforms. So these were the issues, or maybe they still are the issues. An obvious thing is that technology changes quickly. We all know that technology changes and it's accelerating at a heightened pace. And this impacts us both operationally and on a creative production level. So how can we deal with these shifts realistically? The institutional needs and approaches change. You know, especially in an institution that doesn't have a collection, the way that we program is perhaps slightly, it's less long-term programming. So the way that we program can alter from year to year. When the series of commissions began, we thought that we would allow the commission to break and disappear into the depths of the website. But we're not prepared for the interest in our commission, in the digital program. So we have actually continued to maintain Agnus, even though I should add we do not own her. Yes, nor do we really have the budget for digital preservation of any kind. Another thing was that we soon realized that with institutional needs and shifts, that the artist platform as a software platform for artists would never be used again. So it is completely entwined within within Agnus and that artwork. It became obvious with technological shifts and our conversations with artists that this was such a specific platform that it was not flexible enough for our needs. We also need to consider the needs of artists. How do we ensure that the artist's creative vision is respected in the future of the work? As an institution, we are artist-led. So how do we ensure that we are in dialogue with artists at every level of commissioning, archiving, and preservation? We obviously have no established digital preservation strategy, something we're working on. And also access. How do we maintain access to the widest possible audience? This means ensuring that we utilize platforms that are broadly available. And the shifting role of the internet, I think, is important here. It's specific to this commission. The way that we access the internet is changing, from interfaces to browsers. In the context of this commission, simple things like the update in Google Chrome browsers means that you can no longer autoplay videos. So that was an important part of the work. So how do we ensure that the work, well, I'll go into this in terms of archiving it, how we've been able to show that original functionality. We also need to consider things like changes in copyright, privacy, data collection policies, and of course, net neutrality. The other thing is maintenance. The launch of a digital commission is just the beginning, and we have to be more concerned with how we follow up with these things. So our approach going forward. So the approach that we are taking currently is that of an archival approach. I'm talking specifically about this work, but this also relates to other works that we are now doing. So here we're looking at the process of making the work as a whole, focusing on documentation, and in particular with relation to software commissions, the importance of the workflow. That is often because you are using multiple softwares in a very specific order, and the way that those softwares interact with each other are really, really important. So we are trying to record some of that information so that we are able to share that with other institutions, other artists. The other thing is how do we document the user journeys through a web work like Agnus? And in terms of the tools that are currently available, I don't know if any of you have ever come across the web recorder. This is an open source tool developed by Rhizome. We have an ongoing dialogue with Rhizome, who are an organization that are based out of the New Museum in New York. They have been developing open source tools and have an online platform and have been doing curatorial work in this field for the last 20 years. They have extensive curatorial and digital preservation knowledge within the institution, and which is excellent. So in collaboration with Google, they developed this tool. So what this tool enables you to do is to make copies of websites that record the processes taking place in the browser. So while the user interacts with the website, that can be recorded. This means that you can record user-specific content, interactions. It is also open source, and anyone can access and use it. And so we have this undertaking ongoing research to see what tools are available for us, because while we are only historically been concerned with the moment of production, we do see that this information is valuable in relation to other institutions. We are also committed to being open source. We try and make as much of the code that we make, that we generate through commissions, available to others. It doesn't always work like that. Another thing, and this is really, really obvious, is future planning. When you don't have a collection or a process of commissioning new works, we haven't actually necessarily been concerned with the future of access. But within this program, and without the constraints or restrictions of physical space and opening and closing times or dates, we can extend access to the work that we do. And we know that in order for that to happen, this means maintenance. And being flexible with certain functionalities that change over time. As I've said, in the current version of Agnus available on the website, you cannot autoplay videos, but soon there will be access to a documented version where you can see this. But that's an unfortunate shift in the way we use the internet. As I've said, research is a vital part of our work going forward. Communication, this is our relationship with the artist, the audience, and our internal and other stakeholders in terms of the shifts in the way that a work is being presented or the type of knowledge gained in the production process. Flexibility, as I've said, we are starting and aiming to be as flexible as possible in terms of how we show these works in the future. And The most important thing is collaboration and skills sharing. We are part of an ecosystem of artists, curators, archivists, developers, collections, who are focusing on this area in terms of born digital commissioning. And the only way that we continue to do the work that we are doing is through sharing the work that we do with those people. I would also say that if you are, I'd stress that developers and programmers who are working with artists on the development of these types of works have the most valuable insights in terms of digital preservation, but also in terms of how institutions might be able to collect born digital works. As I have recently noticed with programmers and developers who are creating VR experiences that museums are starting to collect. They hold a significant amount of knowledge. So as you can see, it's very early days for us in terms of the way we think about digital preservation, archiving, but we know that in order to stay relevant in this area, we will continue to undertake this research and shift the way that we function as an institution. So thank you very much. If you ever have any questions, please ask.